I sent a message out earlier today just mentioning that I would go live this evening just to honestly talk. I know it's been quite a bit of changes and just different things going on recently. Haven't had as many posts up. I have switched to a marketing and branding company to kind of handle that. So that way I could focus on my research as well as being in the community and other facets. But I'll be honest, like this is so informal this evening. So I'm hoping that if you have questions that you'll be able to chime in. Also too, just making this readily available should someone that can't be on right now be able to go back and say, you know what, I really could use that information or find that information useful. So it's going to seem a little bit scatterbrained in regards to the information that I'm sharing, but I'm sharing it to you just based off of the things that I will tell you breaks my heart on a regular basis, because I know that we were all given, and I'm speaking of America, a crash course in infection prevention overnight. Many of us are doing our best to try to keep our families safe, but unfortunately, some of us are not realizing the unintended consequences of our behaviors. And so I just want to talk through a couple of those. For one, I understand from the beginning of time of the pandemic, there's been a controversy in regards to masks. So, why do I have to wear a mask? And, if I am going to wear a mask, then what does it protect me from? Like, there's a lot of things around masks. And so the thing is that I'll tell anyone, it's just like if we were to take vitamin C or a vitamin, right? So we know that if we were to take a vitamin, having the right dosage of that vitamin would be good for us. But if we were to do overkill and say, oh, we're going to take the whole bottle of vitamin C, then we can end up putting ourselves into toxicity. So it's the same exact thing when we're talking about these masks. So these masks can be very protective, but it means that in order for them to be protective, we have to make sure that we are using them properly. I will tell you, I am so tired of the chin girdles. The chin girdles are not only driving me crazy because of appearance, it's just driving me crazy because I know that people really don't realize the safety hazards that are associated with wearing them in that manner. The other thing it comes to is a difference in masks. So I want to talk a little bit about the differences in those. So I know that just that in itself could be a whole 30-minute conversation, and that's not my intent here. But I definitely want to make sure that I am bringing information like that up. So I'm going to start with the mask, okay? So I know that like right now, like you can see my upper body and my hands. So we're talking about wearing masks. Literally, the first rule of thumb is if you do not clean your hands before you put your mask on, okay? And I'm talking about properly, making sure in between fingertips, all of that, everything, including your wrists. If you're not doing that for 25 seconds, you've already defeated yourself before you put the mask on. Now, once you do put the mask on, most masks come with two strings, right? Some of them adjustable, not some of them disposable, not. I just want to help you to understand what's happening when you misuse this, okay? So you may be able to not hear me as well because I may sound muffled. So the mask is on, right? Most people, let's say they don't fit right. So when you talk, sometimes your mask ends up coming down here. I'm seeing people, this is incorrect. So what I'm getting ready to do right now is a big no-no. They do this. You've now taken all of the contaminants on the outside of your mask and you now have them on your hands. And if you don't practice hand hygiene, then it's still dirty. It is proper that you take it off from ear to ear. It is proper that if it does this, you take it by the ear and you readjust it. That is how you readjust a mask, okay? So that's one tip. So never grab it by the front. The other piece of that is this. I see this oftentimes. Do you see my neck and how it's exposed? So let's say I go into a party, right? And I'm like, oh, wow, this place seems to be a little bit too crowded. I'm going to have my mask on. So I'm in a party and I have my mask on and I'm doing well and I feel protected. I walk outside, right? And the first thing I do is, woof, I'm so tired. I now got on my chin girdle. This is a chin girdle. So whether you wearing it like this, whether you wearing it like this, whether you wearing it like this, it's a chin girdle, right? But what happens is you've now taken all of the contaminants, because COVID can live on your neck, okay? It can live on any part of your skin for up to 9 hours, and studies show this, right? So you've now taken all of the contaminants that you collected from the party and in the air, and it's now on your neck. So then when you inappropriately go to pull your mask back up like this, you've now taken all of the contaminants from your neck and you've moved it directly to your nose and your mouth. We all know that COVID transfers by eyes, mouth, and nose, okay? If for whatever reason you are in a party or any kind of setting and you're wearing your mask properly and you say to yourself, I need a breather, just take it off. Take it off. Just take it off. This is the safest manner to make sure that you are going to be safe. If you are walking around with your mask on as a chin girdle and you are truly seeking protection, I'm just letting you know that it's not helping you if you're wearing it in that manner. So please make sure that if you are going to wear it, you wear it properly or you just remove it altogether. I'm bringing this up because many people continue to think that the mask itself is what's causing the issue when it's our infection prevention that's around the mask. Now, I'm not going to tell you that the masks are out of the blue just yet because they're not, okay? And I actually got like a couple of disposable packs here. It's not to put any kind of brand on blast right now, but I need you all to be able to understand this. When we're talking about these cloth masks and we're talking about wearing it, I might not see any bacteria, any fungus, any viruses inside of my mask, but that does not mean that I don't need to wash it daily. There are bugs that we cannot see that are beyond our control, the same way we can't see COVID. These are the things that accumulate. They multiply. They love moist environments. So if you are a mouth breather and you're wearing your mask and you've breathed into your mask, you've likely created a moisture breeding ground for other germs to be there. So you say, oh, I'm getting ready to hang it up and it'll dry and it'll be ready tomorrow since it doesn't visibly look dirty to me. The next time you go to put that mask on, it has all of those contaminants in there, right? So you saying, oh my gosh, I don't like wearing a mask because mask gives me headaches. Is it the mask that's giving you the headache, or is it the fact that you have not laundered your mask every day, which is recommended? Okay. And for some people, again, that are mouth breathers, it may be more. So that's it for the cloth mask. Now, when it comes to disposables, these disposable masks in themselves, all of them have directions on the back. This particular one, I don't know if y'all can see that. It's got the ingredients on here. It's got how to put it on, and it has how many hours you should wear it. Hold on, let me see. I'm going to back up a little bit. And this actually, it doesn't have like the time frame on here, but I'm going to show you where it does have the time frame. Do y'all see literally where the manufacturing date? This expired. The manufacturing date, okay, don't get me wrong, this isn't expired. It says the storage period is 2 years, right? So by September of 2022, these masks in this particular container are going to be expired. Now, that's what I want you to pay attention to, but I also want you to look at the materials for which the mask is made of, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But on here, it says caution. There's a caution sign. It says for single use only, replace with the new mask after 8 hours of continuous use. Many people really don't realize that these are for single use only. And if they say don't use for more than 8 hours, ask, why should I not use that mask for longer than 8 hours? A lot of times it can be because of the ingredients in the mask, which one of the ingredients is polypropylene. What I encourage you all to do is look up side effects associated with polypropylene, okay? Because it's not that I'm telling you not to wear the mask. It's just understanding that when you wear the mask past the required times, can the FDA or can others ensure the safety of the mask? And the question is likely they cannot if you are not abiding by it. So where it is, this one says 8 hours. Okay, and I'm just gonna zoom in. This box right here, and a lot of them says non-medical use. So they tell you how to wear it. Hold on, where is it at? Hold on. Because this one I know for sure. Okay. So the font is really small, and I'm going to see if I can angle it right. So on here, let me see, because I'm going to try to point to it. You see that over here? It says after 4 hours. So it says after 4 hours of continuous use. So you're really not supposed to use these past 4 hours. I get it. A lot of us are told like, hey, at minimum, change your mask daily. Some of these have literally issues where it says to 4 hours or 8 hours. Okay, I see somebody's trying to ask a question. What's the question? I'm ready. So did it pop up yet? So I'm going to keep talking until, okay, so what is the effectiveness of the cloth mask? The effectiveness of the cloth mask changed depending on the material. So the World Health Organization, when the study was launched, the teeth cloth material, and so I'm talking about the materials that we have in our kitchens, the kitchen towel material. So that's the best way to describe it, was found to have the most effectiveness when it comes to being able to filter out droplets. If you can imagine, if you can breathe something out, and let's say you can blow out a match just by being able to talk, then that lets you know already that that's the same amount of particles that can come through the actual mask. Masks are a preventative measure. It is not a all concrete measure, meaning like this is not something that's meant to completely say no to COVID and other germs. It is simply meant to capture some of the germs. It's almost like as if you were using a strainer with some rice, but it was a bad strainer. And so some of the rice ended up seeping through, but not all of the rice. I want you to think about the mask as being just that. None of these measures, whether we're talking about even something as simple as hand hygiene. So you can clean your hands, right? But if you don't clean your hands correctly, then you might as well have not cleaned them at all. But it does not necessarily mean that you're not providing yourself some protection. You're just not giving yourself the maximum amount of protection. And so that's where we're coming into when we're talking about masks. But I want to tell people the same way that, yes, I can advocate for them and just say like, hey, these they can have some benefit. We also still have to be conscious about the things that we have to check for. If you're wearing a mask for longer than 5 days, whether it's cloth or disposable, I'm letting you know that you are putting your health at risk. You should be abiding by the change policies. If it is a cloth mask, I do recommend at minimum that you are washing it daily. And if you know that you are a mouth breather, then it should be much more frequent than that. So that is what I have to say in terms of a disclaimer on the mask. I know that, again, there are conspiracy theories out there. There are things that are being said. Well, masks can do this. Well, masks can do that. Masks have bad effects. Guess what? There are some ingredients inside of the disposable mask that can be hazardous. It is important that if you are going to wear a disposable mask, that you abide by the information that are on the ingredients of the actual mask. So if the mask says that, hey, you should only be wearing it 4 hours, only wear it 4 hours. If it's only 8 hours, it should only be 8 hours. When you look up polypropylene, okay, as an actual ingredient, and you literally, because it's a melt blown material, when you look up polypropylene and you say side effects of polypropylene, it is going to come up with cancer. It is going to come up with birth defects. It is going to come up with some other detrimental things. And you're going to say to yourself, well, this is what the conspiracy theorists have been saying. Well, guess what? The information is there. It's just how are you using that information? So if you are wearing a disposable mask for longer than 8 hours and it is advised that you switch it out and you change it, then yes, you could very well be putting yourself at risk for some of those things that they mention are an actual health hazard, which then, of course, would make that not a conspiracy theory, but also just a contingency in terms of like how we're using the information. So that's what I have to say about masks. Now, when we're talking about hand hygiene, I know I go over this all the time, but I just want to remind people that our cell phones, they are our third hand, okay? This is our third hand. I mean, seriously, like I know that if I am getting ready to talk on this phone, I have it in my hand. If I'm checking my email, I have it in my hand. If I am getting ready to, you know, text somebody, I have it in my hand, okay? All of us are guilty of this. We use this phone for everything. This is like our third hand, just as I mentioned. So I just want to walk you through some scenarios, which is to justify why you should be cleaning your phone at least twice a day, okay? Now, if you are like me, where you are out in public and you're trying to communicate with somebody and you need to send a text, I guarantee you're likely not saying, oh, let me clean my hands before. I'm sorry, I'm shooing away kids right now. So it doesn't mean that like literally you're not you're cleaning your hands and saying, oh, let me clean my hands before I respond to this text message. That's not what we do. Like none of us do it, right? So what you have to realize is you have touched your phone and you're sending that text message out. Now, after you've touched your phone and you're sending that text message out, you've now set that phone down again. You done forgot about it. Might have checked the email or two. But then guess what? You have somebody that's getting ready to call you. So what do? You do this. Hey, what's going on? You've now taken the germs that you've transferred from your hands and you've now transferred it right over to your face, right? Because it's coming from your phone. And many people really don't realize that we are notorious for this. The other piece of that is how many of us sit our phones down on surfaces. I'm guilty of it. I'll be at a grocery store and say, hey, you know what? I need to grab my card out of my wallet. So I'll sit my phone down on the surface. Now, these are surfaces that you can't guarantee was cleaned by the person that was before you. They're not surfaces that you've cleaned, but you set your phone down. 9 times out of 10, did you sit your phone down on its back or did you sit it down any other way? Does it really matter when the palm of your hand is going to touch the back of your phone or your fingers are going to touch the front? Or let's say you do one better and it's your face. So now your face and you're sitting here talking and you've now taken all of those germs that were on the counter and you've transferred them now to your face. I remind people, because some people say, well, that's a little bit OCD, or, oh my gosh, that's so meticulous. When we ask ourselves, how did I get COVID? How did I get this common cold? Why is it that I got a stomach flu? These are things that we do that we never think about in terms of how we transfer bugs, right? Bugs exist. They existed before COVID. They're going to exist after COVID. So I know everyone is concerned right now saying COVID, COVID, COVID. I need us to still understand that there are other bugs that still exist, which is more of a reason of why we should be adapting these infection prevention practices into everything that we do. The problem is that we do so many things and we're so busy trying to multitask that the thing that we don't think about is ways for us to stay safe from the things that we cannot see. The things that we cannot see is the bacteria, the fungus, and the viruses that are out there. So we're fighting an unknown enemy right now, or an unseen enemy is the better way, because trust me, we've known about them for years, which is why I do what I do. So I'm going to bring some other stuff up because, again, this is just for the sake of time. I will be back on, definitely reiterating the information, but I just have to bring some things up because these are the things that's most pressing. I see these out at the store all the time. So I see grandma. So grandma is handling her phone. Grandma got her phone in her hand with these gloves on. She also has her merchandise that she's getting ready to purchase. So she done picked all of these up. She also then went in her pocketbook and she didn't grab her card to be able to pay for it, right? And the question comes is, what is she protecting? If she's thinking she's protecting her hands, these gloves are porous, meaning that germs travel through these gloves directly onto the hands. These gloves don't protect anything. They stop us in healthcare from being in contact with bodily fluids and anything that may be of direct, let's say, enemy, but they don't provide the greatest protection in the world, okay? Now, your hands, on the other hand, have a layer, and it's called our normal flora. Our normal flora has a better chance of protecting us against germs than what these gloves do. What happens is as you continue to go around, so you've touched your money, you've touched your plastic card, which other people have touched, you've touched food, you've touched everything, right? It's just building up a biofilm or a layer on your gloves, so that way the next time you go, let's say you accidentally sweep your hair out the way, let's say you touch your arm, you've now taken all of those germs from your hands and you've now put it directly on your skin. These do not help. They only help if you're coming directly in contact with some sort of fluid that is an absolute risk. Okay, so the best mechanism that you can possibly use is to wash or sanitize your hands. If I see someone with gloves on, I am absolutely freaked out, because I know that if they came in contact with me and they also came in contact with everybody before me, those germs are going to stay on those gloves for a very long time, which means that by the time they come in contact with me, I don't have anything coming. So I'm going to give you a prime experience. So it's been a lot of traveling going on lately. I'll be honest, I've been traveling lately, okay? And I think all of us is going through this like post-pandemic, like let's just kind of get out and get away and do things that we weren't able to do before when everything was shut down, right? So when you go through TSA, and I want you to think about the last time you went through TSA, the person that's checking you in, that literally takes your ticket and they take your ID, they all got on gloves. I want y'all to pay attention to the fact, like, do they change those gloves? Have they changed those gloves in between people, right? Likely not. They likely have not changed those gloves in between people. Okay? So if they haven't changed those gloves in between people, they take your ID, right? Now, many know, and we've seen this early on from studies, that COVID lives on plastic for up to 4 days. So 3-4 days, it can last for up to 4 days. So what you do, you've passed them now your ticket, you've passed them your card, you so urgent trying to hurry up and get your belt off or get your shoes off and get through TSA, you've stuck this card somewhere and you've touched your hands with it. You've either put it in your backpack, you've put it in your purse, you've done something with it, right? But you're not paying attention to the fact that you could have taken an alcohol swab real quick and wiped it down and put it directly in the trash right there, because y'all know they got the trash can right there in order for us to throw away our extra liquids, because some of us forget sometimes. So you could easily take an alcohol wipe, wipe your card down, clean your hands, put it in your bag, okay, before you get ready to go through the line. But instead, many of us stick this back in our wallet, right? And then we pull it out the next time and we getting ready to eat, or we getting ready to like what? Go back on our cell phone again to see where our flight is at. And we done forgot, right? Same way that I'm sitting up here talking right now with these gloves on. These gloves are bad news. And I continue to say it, and I'll continue to say it all the time, because I'm telling you, they're trouble. So remember to wipe down your cards. I'm not talking about just in TSA. I'm giving an example for when you're getting ready to take a flight, because many people will say, oh man, it seems like every time I go on a trip, I get sick. Are you getting sick because it was the flight, or are you getting sick because maybe it had to do with the card and you didn't clean your hands? Maybe it had to do with the surfaces that was touched by their workers with those gloves, which again, bioburden, it rubs off, like germs rub off. And then you didn't think to clean your hands when you left out of there. I know one of the things that I think about when I go through the airport is, hey, you know what? Let me find some food before my flight, or let me find a coffee or something. We likely haven't cleaned our hands. So I just want people to kind of think about that as a aspect. I'm still on this topic of the gloves because I can't let it go. Okay, so I'm putting these gloves back on. And I'm going to talk about fast food real quick because fast food is an issue. And I promise y'all, I'm only going to keep you for about 5 more minutes because I'll be honest, I got a whole grant to write and I got to get to bed. So now, I'm going to just use an example of a fast food restaurant. All of us that went through a fast food line, right? And when you make it up to the front and you say, okay, I ordered a lemonade, sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't. This is your cup, okay? This is your cup and you say, I got my lemonade. This is your top. How do you think they get this top on there? They do this. Look. These are the same gloves that then probably touched this because the person that's 9 times out of 10 that's cashing you out is the person that's doing your drinks. And I know y'all know I'm not telling the story. So they've now taken all the germs from all of the cars they touched because they don't change these gloves. And they've now mashed it down on your drink. Now, all of us have been to the doctor to be able to understand that anytime somebody's getting ready to put a needle into our arm, right? When they put a needle into our arm, they have to clean it off with alcohol. They clean it off with the alcohol because they want to make sure that nothing goes in as they're putting the needle in. So they clean the surface off. So I want you to think about that visual. Now I want you to think about the fact that your straw is going inside of your cup that somebody just put that nasty glove on. Okay? And I'm bringing this up because, again, when some of us say, oh, man, I ate something yesterday and my stomach wasn't feeling right, or I ate something, a little while ago and it was off. This is why it was off 9 times out of 10, because we don't think about what they're doing with these gloves. We don't think about what they're doing with our card and the fact that they have touched hundreds and thousands of cards before we interact and we make it to that window. It's something that we're not sure of. Bringing something else up, and this can be with gloves or not, so I'm gonna do the sake of take the gloves off. I'm still on fast food, okay? So many of us will go, and let's say we order our chicken nuggets and our fries, and this is the container that they put it in, right? And I just found a random container from around the house, but I just want to bring this up. So this is the container, and let's say we order some coleslaw, or here it is, we ask for some ketchup. They sit this right on top of our food. They take the sauce and they put it right directly on top of our food. Do y'all realize that these containers are somewhere in the sleeve of a container, sometimes like this, or they're sometimes somewhere in a box. They're sometimes on a shelf. I've seen them fall on the floor. It happens, okay? And they've now taken those contaminants and they're setting it right on top of your food just to make sure that you can have some sauce to go along with your food. Whenever you are going out to eat and you ask for any of these things, it is essential that you ask them to not sit the sauces next to your food. Say, can you please pack the condiments separately? Even if you're going through fast food, and let's say your fries are sitting there on top, make sure that they hand you your sauces in your hand or pack them down in a separate bag. Because again, you don't know where they were laying at. Some of that stuff could have been in a box. We know that roaches love cardboard. They might not be able to get in the barbecue sauce, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they wasn't hovering around the barbecue sauce. So it is essential that you make sure that that is not placed next to your food. So for the sake of time, just like I promised, I am going to hop off. So if anything, I just want to remind you to think about what you're doing in regards to your mask. Make sure that you're paying attention to the gloves. Make sure you're paying attention to what you're doing with your cars and being able to clean them. Make sure that you're paying attention when you are going out for fast food. What is someone doing with their gloves? What are they doing with their hands? It is essential. And most importantly, hand hygiene is known to be the easiest, simplest, the most cost-effective way to prevent the spread of infections, okay? With that being said, make sure that when you're doing hand hygiene, you consider your third hand, which is your phone, because your phone can be a contaminant. Now, I'm going to stick around for a couple of more minutes just to take a couple of questions. I know we didn't make it to vaccines, but for the sake of time, I'll continue to get there maybe another day sometime this week. If not this week, it'll be next week. But I know that there's so much that we need to discuss, including the fact that our kids are getting ready to go back to school. And I promise you, I'll have some tips for that too, as well as be able to answer questions. But right now, if you have questions based off of whether it's this topic, whether you want to hop to school, just really quick, I'll be happy to answer those questions because I know we're going to be wrapping up pretty soon. So I'll stick around for a couple of minutes. Should our children be wearing masks in elementary school is the question. So I will tell you this. There are reasons for why children should be wearing masks, including the fact that they are the population right now that cannot be vaccinated. And I'm not saying that because I'm saying kids should be vaccinated. I'm saying that because they are around adults that can still transfer the bugs. And unfortunately, even for individuals that have been vaccinated, they've created this false sense of security that hygienic practices such as hand hygiene and environmental cleaning is not needed. So masks can help to serve as a barrier for our kids. The other piece of it is too that we cannot ignore is the fact that last year, because we did have, let's say, mask policies in place, kids were not in school, we were able to cut down on flu and cold rates, which was legitimate. So I'm not saying that it wasn't, but I'm saying that in regards to kids wearing masks at school, it's a lot that's going to go into that. Who's going to change them out when the kid sneezes? Who's going to monitor to make sure that if it's 8 hours or if it's 4 hours on the mask, that they are being changed out properly? Who's going to monitor to make sure that for our children, that come from areas of poverty or maybe where they are not well resourced, that child is not walking around in that same mask for 5 days, which means that it's going to present more of a health hazard than it is a benefit? It's a lot of questions to unpack there. And so when someone asks, should our children be wearing a mask in elementary school? It is a challenge to be able to answer because, of course, we don't want them ill, but it's like the other extreme of that is do we want them sick trying to prevent an illness? And so it's a lot more than just saying like, hey, we just want to wear a mask. It's going to come with hand hygiene. There's a lot of things that we can do. So another question is, let me see. Okay, good advice. It's tough to stay vigilant. Probably the best people can reasonably do is have wipes in the car, etc. So that's way they can disinfect more often than not at all. That is absolutely correct. What would you suggest? Exactly what you mentioned, I think, is absolutely key. So when I go to a grocery store, if I'm out in public, I actually have some hand wipes or alcohol wipes on me. And I make sure that I'm cleaning my hands before I get inside of my car. Because a fourth thing, or I would say a fourth hand, is our steering wheels, right? So all of us know, and especially if you are someone that is on the road often, you live in your car. So you're probably eating in your car, you're touching the steering wheel, and you're answering your cell phone, you're touching the steering wheel, and you may have to push some gears or some buttons in the middle, you're messing with the radio, all of these things. And so I always tell people to look at their car as being a safe haven. And if it is a safe haven, make sure you're cleaning your hands before you get in it so you don't have to worry about contaminants in it. If you're not vigilant about cleaning your hands before you get in your car, just make sure that you are, as this gentleman brought up, taking wipes with you so that way you can wipe everything down. But I always say, if you use your car and your home as your sanitized haven, your goal is to make sure that you are cleaning yourself and cleaning items as much as possible before you enter that space, so you don't have to worry about the spread in your space. So it can actually go a lot farther doing it that way, opposed to having to get in and question what it is you touched. One of the things that I always say, and I know a lot of people don't agree with it, But when people say, well, what do you do with your mask? I recommend taking a brown paper bag and putting it in a paper bag. If that's too much, if anything, hang it from the mirror. And I know that that's not something that people would say is quite sanitary, but at least you know the inner part and the outer part is not touching something that's going to potentially contaminate something else. So that is the benefit of hanging it from a mirror if you have to put it inside of your car. I don't say hang it from the the what is it, the turn signal, because that's something that you're constantly going to be touching and interacting with. So if there was some contaminants on the outside of the mask, then you're likely going to contaminate yourself with them. So that's a great question. And I'll take one more and then we'll be wrapping up. So do we have any other questions? Okay. So this will be it. And I thank you all so much for joining me. If you have any other questions, as always, you can leave them in the comment box and I'll get to them within 24 to 48 hours. Also, feel free to follow, if not subscribe to preventionsaveslives.com. So that is a website that I have committed to infection prevention practices and information, so that way you can follow me in terms of what it is that I'm doing. If you have any other questions, please ask. I do not think any question is a dumb question. Again, just as I mentioned, we were given a crash course, speaking of America, in infection prevention overnight. And so some of the things that we're doing, we just don't think about that we're doing, but it could actually be something that's putting someone at risk or putting ourselves at risk. And so that's the whole goal, is to make sure that I'm helping you all in terms of trying to prevent some of the practices that you're doing that could be putting you at risk that you may not realize. So have a good night.